Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the MMA on the Island podcast for episode number 8. Almost there. Two more to go, and we'll have the full 10. But as you can see, Aiden is back with us. Bob went to bed early, so he's not joining us here today. But Aiden is back, doing it over Zoom because Aiden is still doing his training. So we got to do what you got to do, and we got to talk about UFC 290. Aiden couldn't miss it, and he's here. Aiden, so happy to have you back. We missed you
I'm
last
not,
week.
brother. I'm happy to be here, man. It's good to be talking to you again. And I couldn't miss that fight card, bro. That card was one. I can't even say it was card of the year. That might be card for the next couple years, if I'm being honest. That was a
Absolutely.
really good card.
And there was just a record-breaking card in numerous ways. One of them being the most stoppages. I think it was 3 stoppages in under a minute, if I wasn't mistaken, for the first time in a fight card. But overall, just an absolute banger of a fight card from start to finish. And it really starts in the prelims, and that's really where I want to start talking about UFC 290. And I want to start with Crute Mennefield because that was a rematch of a fight that we saw a couple months back that ended in a draw, and it wasn't really controversial because it was very close. The MMA community was very much,
Well,
on either side,
well,
and then there was
actually,
that point deduction as well.
I was just
Yep.
about to say it wouldn't have been a draw if Manfield didn't. I forgot what he did. Was it an eye poke or a groin
He might
shot?
have
I don't know what.
grabbed. I don't remember. Or a
Grabbed the fence or
fence.
something.
I don't remember exactly what the infraction was, but yeah, it seemed like it was pretty much it was a very close fight, but it seemed like Mennefield had one on the scorecards, and then of course the point deduction led it to being a 28-28 draw. But Mennefield was able to prove that he was the better fighter, and a lot of people coming into the fight had confidence in Crude. I'm not sure if he was the betting
He was a
favorite.
favorite.
Yeah,
He
I think
was
he
the
was the
slight favorite.
favorite. But Mennefield came in and found a submission in round 2. That was something that not many people saw coming. People thought the advantage for Mennefield was going to be on the feet, but he was able to do damage in that fight and find the finish. And really, really impressive stuff from Alonzo Mennefield, especially at I think he's 33 years old at this point. For
35.
him,
So he was
35.
saying he
Wow.
wants to get more active. I think he wants to fight again by the end of the year. 3 fights this year. I mean, at 35 years old, Joe, it's like not many fighters hit their peak at that late in their career. I think he only
Absolutely.
has. I think he's 13-3, so he doesn't really have you know an extensive personal professional record. So if he wants to make a run for the money, now's the time to do it. Yeah. So we'll see how we do.
Absolutely. And he proved to 14-3-1 on his career with the
14-3-1.
victory
Okay.
for Crew. Yeah, he came in 13. Um, and for looking to the future for him, he wants to stay active. And I would like to see him fight this year and at the end of the year. And I would like to see him fight the winner of Khalil Roundtree versus Chris Daukaus. That fight taking place in late August. I think on the
Mm.
292 card, Roundtree currently sits at, if I'm not mistaken, I
14.
think he sits at 14, no, at 13th, just above Mennefield, who was not ranked and is now ranked 14th.
Crude's
As
out of
we
the
are filming
rankings.
this on a Wednesday. Crute did get
Yes.
booted out of the rankings, yeah. So Mennefield took the 14th spot, Jacoby at 15, and Roundtree at 13. So Crute did lose his spot in the rankings, and I think deservingly so, considering he did get finished, and it was I think Mennefield won round 1 as well. So
He did. No, 100%.
absolutely.
I can't say I don't like that, but I do believe, you know, in my opinion, right? Yeah, he
Yeah.
had the point deduction, but if you take that away, he really won both fights, right? So I think
Yeah.
he should get somewhere. And obviously, I didn't get to look at the doc or anything. I've been, doing
Hmm. Of
this, but um,
course.
I think he should fight up. Honestly, I think he deserves to fight the winner of Span versus Smith too. I don't think that'd be a bad matchup.
I
I
like
think
that.
Span
I
is
like
sitting.
that.
I think Span's still sitting at 10. Smith is at 7, and
A lot of money.
I don't see Smith winning. I think this is his retirement fight, if I'm being honest. So I think that'd be a good matchup. And honestly, I would favor Manfield in that fight. You know,
I like
so
that as well. I like that as well. I think that if the UFC is trying to maybe boost Menafield up, I think Menafield could bring some eyeballs. I think his fight style is exciting. I think he's very talented at 35. So
he is.
granted he probably doesn't have too much time left. I mean, you never know. Some of these guys just defy, the laws of physics with the way they're able to perform so well for so long. But I like that as well. That would be a big jump for Menafield. And I think he would be able to handle either Span or Smith. I think both guys would be a favorable matchup for Menafield. But and really exciting stuff from someone who most the consensus was he wasn't going to win, and he was able to win in pretty dominant fashion and prove that he should deserves to be in that top 15 at the middleweight division. And
Absolutely.
for Jimmy Crute, I mean, a tough loss, and for him, I like to see him. I wouldn't want to see him maybe stay fight someone in the rankings after as you said, technically, take a point that point deduction away. He's lost back-to-back fights. But I'd like to see him fight the winner of a fight that's happening in just a few weeks, in the number 15 ranked just Dustin Jacoby taking on the undefeated, and I hope I don't butcher this name, but it's Nizaj Nizaj Nizajaku. Do you know who I'm talking about?
Was this the guy we mentioned that time at my house? Is he ranked 13th or something like that?
No, he's unranked, but he's undefeated in the
Oh,
UFC. And he's pretty good. I watched him fight once. But he's somebody that's but I'd like to see him fight the loser of that fight because Jacoby has his 15. So I think Nzeku, I guess we'll go with Nzeku. Is
oh,
I think
Kennedy Nzeku. Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yes, yeah. So I'd like to see him fight the loser of that fight because the loser of that fight would not be ranked, but would be kind of in that
Wait,
same
I'm
area.
sorry.
I think it would make
So
sense.
Jacoby's fighting Nzeku or the
Yeah,
guy you
yeah,
can't say.
yeah.
Oh,
Nunjaku. Yeah,
wait,
Kennedy
he's
Nunjaku.
undefeated or undefeated in the UFC?
I think he's undefeated in the UFC.
Okay, yeah, I'm pretty sure he
Yeah.
has like 3 losses
Yeah,
on
no,
his record.
yeah, he does. But he's undefeated in the UFC, and his last two fights finished. Well, he was able to get finished his last three fights actually, dating back to his win against Devin Clark back in May. So he's been a guy that's
And
been
yeah,
on a streak and has been primed for top 15 competition. And whether he loses this fight to Dustin Kobe or either way, I think it makes for a good matchup for Crute because I think Crute should still be fighting at in the elites in the middleweight
yeah,
in that top 20-25 range for sure.
and I think I'm just gonna say Kennedy because I'm not gonna waste my time trying to say the
Yeah,
last name.
honestly,
I think
smart.
Kennedy beat Iwe Cutelaba too in the
Yes,
previous fight.
yes, he did.
And I mean, obviously Cutelaba now, like he's been on a losing skid. I know he just picked up a win, but when he started in the UFC, man, he fought Roundtree. I think he knocked him out. Like everybody set the bar so high for Cutelaba.
Yeah,
So
Kutalava.
maybe, and I think he's fighting soon as well. Actually,
I
I'm
would
not too
like to see
sure.
Kutalava back. Kutalava is a guy who has he's 17-9-1. Doesn't have the best record, but he's actually fighting OSP and
Oh, Vince St.
on the
Preux.
on the Sanhagen Nurmagomedov card. That should be a good
That's gonna be a
fight.
good card, man.
That's gonna be a good fight. I'm not gonna lie, I didn't even know about that one. That one's like that kind of flew under the radar for me personally. But Kutalava is a guy
The
that I'm
card or
always
that
ready to
fight?
see. What was that fight? What was that?
The card or that fight?
Oh no. The I guess the card in general, but I didn't know that that fight was even happening. So I
Yeah,
mean that's gonna
yeah,
be
yeah.
that's gonna be a banger of a fight. Hopefully they put that on the main card. Because who knows when the prelims are gonna be. They always like to time those fight nights that they'd like to experiment time at different points. So
Of course.
hopefully that's at a watchable time because I absolutely want to see Kutalab OSP. That actually should be that's enough for a co-main, honestly, for me in terms of fight nights. I mean, I'm some fight nights like this weekend's not too hot. So I mean
I don't think
to
I'll be
have a
tuning
fight
in
like
for that one.
OSP Kutalava, it's that's a good fight. I'm looking forward to it. In the
Speaking
light
of
heavyweight.
prelims, did you see the disrespect they're giving to Jack Della Maddalena? He's fighting in the prelims this weekend, right? Against a guy I've
Yes.
never heard.
Yeah.
What type of
Yes.
BS is that, dude? How do you go from
That
being on
is
the main card at
ridiculous.
290? Two guys pulled out, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
And yeah, Brady and Isaac Hartshaw or something. And now he's fighting some other like I don't know, man. A top prospect like that shouldn't be on the prelims of home
No.
and something fight card. I forgot the
Yeah,
other girl's name.
absolutely. I mean, I don't know why they wouldn't just throw him as like the co-main or the third fight. That doesn't make sense to me. And because I heard that and then I kind of like forgot about it because I was looking at this week's fight card, scrolling through quickly, and I'm like, oh man, but Jack Della Madalena's fighting and he's a beast. So
He is.
I'm gonna be tuning in for that fight. Hopefully, it's really I mean, he's getting a paycheck, but at the end of the day, it's not a fight that that it's not really a win. There's no really win for him. If he wins the fight, he was expected to win. Great. But then, if he
Exactly.
loses, then all of the hype that he's built kind of derailed. So it's unfortunate. I mean, I'm fine with when they give a guy on short notice just to give him a fight. And I guess I'm sure that's what he wanted, is just to fight and get the paycheck. Because at the end of the day, you only fight when you only pay when you get fight. So he probably wanted to fight and just get the paycheck. And hopefully he seems like a guy that the UFC does like. So hopefully they give him, a big jump in terms of the fight, in terms of ranking and fights, give him a favorable matchup for the next fight, or at least a jump in competition.
Do they get paid though if like if like fighters back out? I feel like they get some percentage of the
Um,
purse. I'm
I'm
not
not
too. I'm
sure.
not.
I'm not
I
sure off
don't.
the top of my head. I could find out. I guess that's something I'll find
We can
out
talk
later
about
in
that
the
another
show.
time.
Yeah, we'll
That's
talk
not
about that
important.
later. We'll find out later in the show.
Yeah, no
But
big
I really
deal.
just want to keep going on this fight card, because in
A lot to talk
the
about.
fight that ended up replacing JDM Brady, and then the JDM versus the opponent, I think it was a Josiah or something like that, that ended up having those
Harsher. Yeah,
medical
yeah.
issues, was ended up being a dominant oh no, actually wait, I'm getting ahead of myself. We gotta start with the women here. The next fight on the prelims was the women's fight, Yasmin, I think Yarji versus Denise Gomez. And Gomez, who was a big underdog against the undefeated prospect, came out swinging and knocked her out in 20 seconds.
That
That
was
was
insane,
one
dude.
where I was kind of excited to watch Jariji. I don't know how to say her name, but whatever it may be, because she was somebody who was, that they were hyping up on the broadcast, undefeated, and
She was a
Gomez
big favorite.
just put it on her. Yeah. And really didn't even give her a chance. Didn't really see, there was no really, you couldn't even tell if the prospect was, if she was even worth the hype, because she just got slept so quickly. But Gomez knew what she had to do. She put the pressure on early and found the finish. And you got to give her hats off to her, especially being a big
Absolutely.
underdog.
Nah, man, absolutely. I if I my memory serves me correct though, I don't know if it was like a controversial stoppage because I don't know if she looked completely out or not. But yeah,
Yeah.
maybe I'm making up the fights.
Yeah,
But I know
no.
she
I
wasn't like
think no, she definitely wasn't out completely cold, but I mean it was I feel like it wasn't a stoppage that I hated, because it was
yeah.
kind of like, Yasmin would probably was going to get hurt some more.
Oh yeah.
So
A matter of
I don't
seconds.
hate them protecting the fighter in that instance. Especially when it's just 20 seconds, just jump out the gate like that. For some fighters, in certain situations they are more lenient, but for a prelim, if you look like you're done, or you're not defending yourself, um, they're gonna stop the fight. But in terms of matchmaking, both those women kind of sit at the bottom of the strawweight division, so I'm not really gonna give them, a matchup, and I'm sure Aiden doesn't have anyone on his mind either, because both women are a few fights away from the rankings. So no really need to get to the matchmaking part for that one. But an overall impressive performance from Gomez. I'm definitely she's gonna be someone I'm gonna be looking forward to watching, because she proved that she can provide some entertaining fights, and is not afraid to step forward and just throw hands, and I can always appreciate that, and especially in women's MMA. So to the fight now that replaced JDM and Sean
The
Brady.
featured prelim.
um oh, no, we got one more to go. It was
Oh,
a Tyra versus Shiraz. That was the fight where another undefeated prospect in Tatsuro Tierra ended up
yes,
getting
yes,
the
yes.
decision against Edgar Chieres. Tatsuro looked fantastic in catch weight. Both gentlemen usually fight at flyweight, but due to the recency of this fight being booked, they ended up they catch weight. I think it was 130 pounds. Um,
Yep.
but either way, a really, really dominant performance from Tierra. Really great grappling, displayed from start to finish. I think he had, I don't know how many takedowns it was. It was two takedowns, but significant control time, and really just outstruck him in all aspects of the fight. That was one that was exciting to watch for another guy, another prospect in a really stacked flyweight division.
Super young. I think I was saying he's the I think he's the 10th youngest fighter on the active roster or something like that. Definitely either 10th or lower than that. And he was in early trouble in the beginning of the fight as well. I think
Yeah,
yeah, he was put in like a guillotine or something like that and then he obviously escaped. I'm not sure if that's the correct submission, but I'm pretty certain it was. And then
yeah, I
he
think you are.
yeah, and then he was able to obviously dominate. I think it was the round 2 was like a 10-8 round and then I think his opponent won round 3 if I'm not mistaken, something like that. But overall like you said, dominant performance and like you said, Tatsuro Tiara, He's another up and coming flyweight has a couple of up and coming contenders like Mohammed Mokayev or something. I think that's his name.
Yep.
He's sitting at number 10. He's only 22. He's like close in age to Tiara. They're both undefeated. That'd be a good matchup down the road. Like, obviously not anytime soon.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? But flyweight's exciting, man. Obviously, take with the co-main, but we'll get to that. But yeah, it's an
Absolutely.
exciting division.
Yeah, and flyweight is one of those divisions that if there's a ranked matchup, I want to tune in. And I think that at this point now, improves to 4-0 in the UFC. Granted, he's a young guy. I think he's deserving of top 15 competition at this point. He looked good. I would understand if someone wants to give him one more fight before top 15, but me, when I'm looking at my future matchups, I like Tahara to fight a guy who's ranked number 12th right now in flyweight, coming off a loss. Sue, another fun name. Sue,
Summerjari?
yeah, Samajari. Oh, Samajari. Oh, you got it. First try. There you go. Aiden's on point.
I think
Don't
his
matter
last
that
fight was
he's not
against
here.
Matthew Christopher Shell, right?
Yeah, it was Schnell. He did end up losing that fight. I think it was a finish. Yeah, I think it was a
Yeah, it was a
submission
finish.
in round 2. But he just got finished. So and he sits at 12. So I think this would be a good matchup for Tierra there. And I think that it's one that makes sense for him at this point in his career. I think he's worthy of fighting top 15 competition, and Sumajari doesn't have a fight right now.
Yeah, that fight was over a year ago. I know it was last year, but that fight I feel like was definitely over a year ago.
Yeah, it was almost a year to date. It was July 16th of last year. So
July
he's been on
16th.
the sidelines for a while.
Yeah, man. I like that too. It's hard with prospects like that. I feel like, yeah, you don't want to like rush them into things, but
Mm-hmm.
I feel like at the same time, it's you don't want to fast track them essentially, but I don't know. I don't feel like a slow progression is necessarily needed. Like the same thing like with Raul Rosas. Granted, the kid's 18 years old, but I mean, he dominated his first fight and they cut the guy Jay Perrin from the UFC. But
Mm-hmm.
then his second fight, he was a huge favorite against Christopher or Christian Rodriguez or something like that. I'm not too sure.
Yeah.
And then he obviously, he showed his I guess his lack of experience. So I can
Yeah.
understand the reason for, not fast tracking certain guys, but you know, Cesaro is sitting at 14-0. Like you said, I think it's time for him to get that shot. So
Absolutely.
we'll see.
Absolutely. Some guys just, some guys need that time. I don't think Tierra is one of them. I think we agree on that for sure. But now for our featured prelim, gotta talk Robbie Lawler versus Nico Price. Lawler found the finish in less than a minute. Who saw
38
that coming?
seconds.
Who saw that coming? I
No,
didn't.
but I don't
Aiden.
think
I did
anybody did.
not.
Price was like a minus 200 favorite.
Yeah.
It wasn't like respectively that close. And yeah, man. But Lawler, that's why his nickname's Ruthless. He came out there swinging. I don't think Price expected that at all.
Yeah.
And he tagged him like within the first 20 seconds or 25 seconds with an uppercut that got Price's attention. But
Yep.
then right from there, Lawler, he did what he did, and he
Yeah.
hit him with another uppercut that laid Price flat out on the canvas. I don't know what that leaves Price with. I don't know if they're going to cut him or what, but that's,
Yeah.
I know that he suffered a loss to Phil Rowe prior to that, and then Phil Rowe got a shot at Magny. That was a snooze fest. So, we'll see. Lawler, this was a good way for him to end his career, man.
Honestly, it really, as someone who has been a fan of Robbie Lawler, since I would be, became a fan of the sport, because he was a guy that I've known ever since I started watching. I think he was the champion, when I first started following the sport,
Yeah, he
even
had
just
like two
briefly.
defenses.
Yeah, and
He had,
he had a great career.
he did, man. You know what? I used to be ignorant to records, right? Because he retired with a record of 30-16, and in
Hmm.
today's MMA, look at that; it's not that good, right? But he was the champion. He had two defenses. I think one against the second McDonald fight,
Yeah,
and then he beat Carlos Conduit, and then he ran into Tyron Woodley, who in his prime, man, that guy was untouchable.
yeah.
So it's tough, but a lot of guys today who I guess are somewhat ignorant to the sport. And I used to be one of those guys. You look at somebody's record and you kind of like take away what they've accomplished in the sport.
Yeah.
Some guy like BJ Penn too. The guy was a 2 division weight champ, beat Matt Hughes,
Yeah.
right? And he actually challenged for a third belt. I'm pretty sure. I think against Frankie Edgar, and he lost both of those fights or three of
Hmm.
those. I don't know if they fought 2 or 3 times, but yeah, BJ Penn retired with a 16-14 record, and looking at that on paper, like that guy's shit. Or I'm sorry, excuse me, that guy sucks. But you
Yeah.
know, obviously in his prime, that dude was a
Nah,
monster. So
BJ Penn was a beast, and MMA records can be deceiving for sure. Because especially a guy like BJ Penn who kind of fell off a cliff at the end of his career and was fighting, I think, more than he should have, like towards the end. I
kind of
think he
like
should have
Silva in a
retired
way,
earlier. Yes, in the same way Anderson Silva, where his record, I don't know what it is off the top of my head, but it definitely,
34-11. I think.
yeah, definitely 5 or 6 of those losses came when he was way out of his prime. Probably could have finished
Yeah,
with a record that would have looked pretty. But these guys are competitors. They want to compete, and they
of
still when they
course, man.
still think that they're the best. But Robbie Lawler, he decided that it was time, and I mean, after coming off of a loss where he didn't not look like himself, he came back and just again looked ruthless. So when I when
Yeah, I
I
think
when I'm
he.
putting my pick together, I said enjoy retirement, Robbie, because he's earned it. But Aiden, take the floor.
No, no, real quick. I didn't mean to cut you off.
Yeah, no, you're good.
I remember his last fight was against Brian Barberino,
Yeah.
and Brian Barberino, I don't know, I think he got a TKO in the second.
Mm-hmm.
But that first round, man, like Lawler, he looked good, and then Barberino, he came away, well, not came away, but he picked it up in the second, and took Lawler out of the fight. But that was heartbreaking to see because Lawler looked good in that fight, but you know what? Nonetheless, we'll end it here, man. It was a really good way. I don't think there's a better way to go out than the way he went out.
Yeah. Especially in a sport like MMA, that's so brutal that most guys don't
41
get.
years old too. Like he's
Yeah.
not young at all.
No, no, no. And most guys don't get a ceremonial, like finish or, like a signature finish like Robbie Lawler had. So and he seemed pretty happy with his decision to retire. So I'm very happy for Robbie. I think he's had himself hell of a career. I talked a little bit and took you guys through his career last week and some of the highlights. And it was a storied career. He's for sure, obviously already a UFC Hall of Famer that was or he was inducted this weekend as well. So, a guy that has nothing more to prove in the sport and, happy to see him get the finish. But then on the flip side, a guy Nico Price, who I was high on, but I mean, man, he's just continues to disappoint me. I mean, he looked good, early in his career, and I was like, man, this guy's tough. And then he lost a couple, and I thought he'd bounce back, but it's been tough for Nico Price. And in terms of the future, I mean, he could be someone on the cut radar. I have him, against someone like Tim Means, who's also kind of on a little bit of a losing skid.
Yeah,
But it's tough. They could really put Nico Price against anybody. Right now, I'd like to see him take a step down in competition significantly,
hundred
and maybe
percent.
see if he still has something left in the tank. Because I wouldn't like to see him get cut because I think he's an exciting fighter and he brings a lot of when he's in the octagon, it's not a boring fight. So I'd like to see him
No,
remain in the UFC. Give him one more chance, give him one more fight. Again, I don't know what the contract looks like, but that's what I would do. Tim Means is a guy I threw out there, but you could really throw it at any guy that I would like to see him fight a veteran. That's not a newcomer or hungry prospect. That wouldn't be fair to Nico.
chances are that's what's gonna happen. But
Yes, yes.
but I think he's
Unfortunately, it's a
definitely
cruel world.
if he's not cut from this fight, he's on his last straw.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely, and it's
But it's
unfortunate
the
to
fight game, man. It
yeah,
happens.
yeah, and thankfully he would get picked up by another organization for sure because he's a name at the end of the day. So the PFLs, Bellators, ones of the world will you definitely find a home somewhere else. But now it's time to talk the main card, and we thought we were
Brother.
excited about the prelims. This main card delivered, and you got to start with Bo Nickel, one of those three that got the finish in under a minute. It only took him 38 seconds to knock out the late replacement in Val Woodburn, and for Bo, I mean. For me, Aiden, I'm gonna be honest with you. I'm impressed with his hands, but at the same time, I was with the way that he finished the fight, he kind of just threw one punch at a time and got completely out of range and then got back in range, threw another punch and then got out of range.
I noticed
I
that
don't
early
that
on, but
that's why I was like people were like, oh, Bo has hands, whatever, but I'm like. Did he though? Because me and you train kickboxing. You're told it's supposed to throw more than one punch before you get completely out of range.
yeah,
So I
I
mean,
guess maybe in his
against
defense, he was
especially
trying
against
to
a
gauge
smaller
the
guy.
distance. Yeah, significantly smaller. I
Yeah,
mean,
exactly.
Val Woodburn sitting at 5'8", Bo Nickel 6'1". You
Yeah,
know, like, and I think it was not necessarily like how good his hands were, because if it was like two random guys, that didn't have a name like Bo Nickel, I'm sure they wouldn't have been gassing him up like that.
for sure.
But because of Nickel's extensive, wrestling background and the accolades that he has, I guess it took people aback, because I think him to win by submission, you know, and obviously odds aren't always a guarantee, but
Yeah, of
I think
course.
he was like a minus. I think he was like a minus 150 or better than that to win by submission. So it was like guaranteed
That's
that he was going to
crazy
win by.
odds to just for somebody to have a specific finish in one fight.
Exactly,
Yeah.
dude. Exactly. So, I guess that, surprised people. But, I got to give respect to Val Woodburn, right? This guy was, I mean, first off, that fight, I think Nickel was the biggest favorite in UFC history. It originally was like
Absolutely.
he was a minus 2,800, and then that dwindled down to minus 1,500. But minus 1,500 is still like stupid, you know?
Yeah.
But, hats off to Val Woodburn. He took that fight on that Tuesday, literally a
Mm-hmm.
week, 8 days ago. And I
Yeah.
think he was working for his landscaping company or something. He flew into
Yeah.
Vegas by himself. I don't know if he even had his team with him or whatnot, or they met him there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you know what? He got knocked out or whatever, but I think he actually signed a 4-fight deal with the UFC. So,
Good.
hats off to him. I think
Good.
he deserved it. But it was just obviously a mismatch. Bo Nickel is a guy they should fast track. Not fast track, but like he should fight maybe a guy like, Bruno Silva, somebody who's sitting outside the top 15, or
No way.
maybe
Aiden,
just
you'll never guess who I had to match up against.
was it Bruno?
Bruno Silva. That's crazy.
I
That's
swear to God, I
crazy.
didn't even
We
look at
did
the PDF.
this week. We didn't give each other our picks or matchups, and Aiden doesn't know who I picked. So for him to say Bruno Silva of all freaking guys, and that's exactly who I had. That's crazy. But yeah,
Because,
Bruno
dude, I mean,
Silva,
it
I'm
makes
with it.
sense. It
It
makes sense.
does.
Like Bo Nickel isn't a guy who should have 7 fights before he fights for a championship fight. Like
Hmm.
Pereira, the only reason like he 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 had 3 fights in the UFC. Some guy I forgot. Then it was Silva, and then Strickland. And Strickland was sitting at 4 at the time, so it made sense because Izzy already at that point had cleared out the division, and
Yeah.
then but he only had 3 fights before he fought the champ. I'm not saying that should be Nickel's case. Like to say he would fight, one guy and then get a shot at the strap is a little, you know, it's a little much.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, I think he should fight either outside the top 15, or I wouldn't be upset with him fighting inside the top 15.
Absolutely.
But one of those two, that he shouldn't fight he shouldn't fight like a guy like, no disrespect to GM3, but like if he was to fight like a Gerald Mearshart, I don't really think that makes much. Actually, I can't really disrespect it because Mearshart did submit Silva, but
Yeah,
he
but
shouldn't
a
fight.
guy that's just really not in the conversation of a top 20,
Exactly,
or on the
exactly.
fringe. I agree. At the top, that fringe top 15 guy, is definitely something that should be on Bo Nickel's radar next. I think, we've seen him fight, some of the bottom tier guys, and he's proven that he's ready. So I think a step up competition, Bruno Silva, as we both said, coincidentally, that I still can't get over that. That's so crazy.
Our minds are in sync
Yeah,
today, Joe.
we're connected tonight. It don't matter. But I'm happy to hear to go back to Woodburn, because to take a fight on short notice, that's because a dangerous guy like Bo. I give props to anybody who steps in the octagon, let alone on such short notice to fight a killer. So I'm glad for Woodburn. Obviously his next fight, it don't really matter who, just a significant step down in competition. And I look forward to seeing him next. Look forward to actually seeing what he has. Obviously, we didn't see much in that first contest, but he was undefeated 7-0 with I'm pretty sure mostly finishes. I
Five
remember,
finishes.
yeah, five finishes out of the seven wins. So he's a guy that proves that he has a lot of power in his hands and can finish fights. So I look forward to seeing him fight some fresh competition and actually having a fair full fight camp and a fair chance at it.
Absolutely.
And but I'm happy to hear that he signed a contract. I didn't know that, and that's actually that's good. I'm happy for that, because I hate when they give guys short notice fights and then they lose them, obviously, and then you don't really see him again. I feel like that's kind of disrespectful. You're just throwing him in there. I mean, you're giving them the chance, but like, to give him a chance on short notice, give him a couple fights.
But
If he
that's not even
loses,
like 2 weeks
yeah,
notice. That's like
yeah,
literally the week, like 3 days, like
exactly,
4 days.
exactly. And for saving a card like that, very well deserving. So
I hope to see Nickel fight again though before the end of the year.
absolutely, that
I
that would
think he
be
said he's
nice
gonna
to
take
see.
some time off for hunting season and whatnot. But if he gets in a December card, That'd be nice.
That would be nice. That would be nice. Maybe throw him on the John Jones card. We'll talk
Oh,
about
it's gonna
that
five. No, we
in
got
a
to go to
bit.
MSG. When we have to
MSG.
pay for
I
now.
listen.
It's
I
gonna
don't
hurt the
even know. I don't
pockets.
even want to look at the tickets right now, Aiden. I don't even want to look at the tickets right now because I know I'm gonna look and start crying because they're gonna be like a grand just to sit in the rafters of MSG.
Yeah. Oh God. Well, we have to go to one of these cards, man, before the year
No, for
ends.
sure, for sure. And maybe it's that one. Listen, I'm down to wait to the very last minute, try to get the cheapest seat and just get
If
me in there.
Colby's on that card, because there's speculation, Edwards is saying it's
Okay,
either gonna fight Abu Dhabi or MSG. Is one of, if
really.
Colby's
They
on that
put that
card,
as
man,
a
I'm going.
co-main? Wow. I'd be
Dude,
surprised if they booked that as a co-main. But I'm
I
with it.
think
I'm not
no,
complaining.
I think it was
But
gonna be a co-main either way
okay.
because Islam was probably gonna be whoever he's fighting. I mean, I don't know if he's fighting. Oliveira said he's not looking to fight in October, and I don't know if Volk is ready. I don't know if they should have that rematch right away. I mean, it would make sense because how much he dominated Yair. I'm not going to talk much about that. But if he was to fight Taporia and then fight Islam again, I think that'd be good. But that fight was so close back in February. Honestly, I would have
Yeah,
no objections to that. But we can move
absolutely.
on from that fight if you'd like.
Yeah, and we will talk about the future matchup for Volk. And spoiler alert, I think they should run that back next because it was so good. I want to see it again. Everyone wants to see it again. Just do it again. I don't think personally. I don't think I think Taporia needs one more fight before he deserves that title fight. That's me personally. But we'll
No,
get into that. We'll get into that.
yeah,
But we
absolutely,
got to start with the return of Dan Hooker.
dude.
Or the
I was a
return
little
of Dan
upset
Hooker
watching
of
that fight.
old.
I was
I know
upset.
you're a big Jalen Turner guy, but I mean Dan Hooker, man, fought through a broken I think part of his orbital ended up breaking in that fight, and part of his arm ended up being broken after that fight, and still was able to etch out the decision. So impressive, man. I mean, coming
It
into the
was,
fight,
dude.
I didn't give him much of a chance. As you guys heard last week, I wasn't giving him much of a chance. I said Jalen Turner probably a lock if you wanted to. He wasn't somebody I put money on, but he was somebody I was like, I don't think Dan Hooker has the tools at this point in his career to beat him, but God was I wrong.
I
And
don't know, man. I
the
think
toughness just out of
that's
this
what
world.
it was. I think, and I'm not biased. I mean, I'm not trying to sound biased. I was just looking at Turner, even that first round in the beginning of that second round when he hit him with that beautiful head kick. I was
Mm-hmm.
like, dude, this guy's skills are so crisp. But
Yep.
then his gas tank depleted drastically,
Yeah.
and he almost got submitted at the end of that round. And, it was a tough weight cut. He missed weight by 2 pounds.
Yeah.
It was upsetting to see, man, because now he's sitting at 13-7. It's not really a good record. He'll probably have to fight outside the top 15 next. Like he'll probably sit at 12, 13, or that'll fluctuate. But he might get a fight against somebody at the bottom, maybe like a Matt Favola. Well, they fought already, so that's actually not going to happen. But
Yeah.
yeah, man, it's disappointing to see because of how talented Turner is. Some people think he should move up to 70. Dude, he's 6'3". Like I wouldn't. You can't. I don't know, man. This guy is probably sucking himself to make 55. I mean, clearly he is if he lifts the
Yeah.
weight by that much. But
Yeah.
it's disappointing to
Absolutely.
see. But you can't refuse to be happy for. You can't fight. You can't not be happy for Dan Hooker, man. He took a layoff. He fought Claudio Poyes back in November. And then he had a really good. He really showed his grit in this fight. I think. I don't. I'm gonna guess your matchup here, right? And I swear to God, like guys, I didn't look at his PDF, and I don't even know if you shared
Mm-hmm.
one with me. Like I have no idea.
Yeah.
Did you say Matuz Gamrot?
Yeah. And I'm less, I'm less like blown away by that one because I feel like that's what a lot of people have been saying amongst the MMA community. I feel like a lot of the talk has been that would be a good matchup next because most people think Cameron should be fighting a little bit down in the rankings, and Hooker obviously with that big victory deserves to be fighting up for sure. So I
Yeah.
think that makes sense. You got a guy in Gamrot sitting at 7. Hooker now got promoted from 12 to 10, and Jalen Turner ended up taking his spot at
12.
12.
Yeah.
So I like Hooker versus Gamrot there, and I would like honestly I would like that as a I wouldn't mind that as a main event of a fight night, for being honest. I think that makes for I'd love to see that in 5 rounds. I
No,
think
I agree.
Dan Hooker is a tough mofo. So, if he and we saw how he was in his I think the only time he had a main event was against Poirier a few years back in that like absolutely crazy fight. I don't think he main evented in any other fighting his
he didn't main event
career.
Chandler?
No,
No, I don't
Chandler,
think he did. I
no,
think that
because
was his homie.
Chandler was, I think he was like the third fight on a pay-per-view. I remember that
Yeah, because that was
vividly.
his debut actually.
Yeah, because I was very excited for Chandler's debut. There was a lot of hype around it,
Yeah,
and he lived up to it for sure in that first fight. And then for
but
Jalen Turner, you talked a little bit about him going out of the top 15. I don't think he should get out of the top 15. I think you should
no, I'm not
fight a
saying
guy
that.
that and honestly, I mean, granted it would be him fighting up, but I like Jalen Turner, like I like you as well. I mean, we're both big Jalen Turner fans, and he's a guy who's uber talented. Let him fight Grant Dawson, a guy we just saw fight somebody who's primarily the ground is and grappling is where his strengths lie, and Turner's obviously is on the feet. So I think it'd be a good test for both. You know, you got Tess and Dawson stand up, Tess and Turner's, the defense on the ground. Because obviously we saw Hooker was able to get him in a pretty bad spot there. Had his back late in that second round. So
Five
I
seconds later, that fight was over.
yeah, absolutely. So I like Jalen Turner to continue to fight tough competition. And that would be two guys that I think are kind of in the same spot in Turner and Dawson, where they're not ready to make a big jump up yet, clearly. But it would kind of be a test of whether they're really could have that potential to get to that level. And I think Turner would pass that test. So for Turner, an unfortunate outcome, but for Dan Hooker, man, so excited to see him back. I was ripping his hair last week because he looked
Oh
really
God.
fruity, if we're being honest, with
Oh
that
dude,
blonde
that
hair.
was
But
abysmal.
yeah, but he said he wanted to look pink with blood, and he got it done. So
He did.
you don't matter what his hair looked like. If you're able to get the victory, I retract everything I said. So
I will say though, real quick,
yeah,
he's not that young, man. He's been in wars. He's like
yeah,
33 or 34. He shouldn't go the Josh Emmett route of fighting once a year for 3, 4 years.
no, no
That's what
way.
Emmett did, and he's 38 years old, and he fought twice this year, and both fights didn't go to plan. So I think
Nope.
Hooker, I think he should fight again by the end of the year. I think this is really his last opportunity to make a home stretch at the title, a shot rather. He never fought for the belt, but yeah, man, he's had two impressive victories. I think, yeah, I don't know if Gamrot's the matchup to happen, but he should fight again by the end of the year. And if he could pick up another dub, man, 3 straight wins, like people might start raising their eyebrows, like, yo, is this a new and improved Dan Hooker? You know,
Yeah.
we'll see, man. We'll see.
Absolutely. And we got three more fights to go, but we're gonna be right back. For you, it's gonna be a
The
quick
40 minutes
five
already.
second transition, but it has already been 40 minutes. Zoom, if you guys don't know, if you're using the free version of Zoom, unfortunately, every 40 minutes the meeting ends. So it's gonna be part one, part two, very simple, quick transition into part two. But I'll do that now because Whitaker Duplessis, who saw that coming, is all I have to say. But
Man, I'm so happy for DDP. And then
yeah.
I really like Whitaker, man. He is, you know, he's beaten everybody. I think I saw a post or a demographic, something like that. Not
Yeah.
demographic, like it was like a post. And
Mm.
he hasn't lost in the last 9 years to a man who wasn't named Israel Adesanya.
Yeah.
Woman that until DDP. And honestly, everybody in the UFC ruled him out because you look at DDP's last few fights, right? Like against Brunson, he looked a bit like his cardio was disgusting,
Yeah.
right? And that fight against Darren Till, that second round, Till started to look promising. DDP looked like he was starting to fade away, but then at this fight, man, that first round, Whitaker, he was relatively aggressive for the first half of that round, and then
Yeah.
DDP once he got him to the ground off of like that headlock takedown, which is really weird because Yoel
Yeah.
Romero, who was an Olympic champion, couldn't take him down. He landed some nasty elbows on the floor that opened up Whitaker's eye, and the way he finished him, man, it was hard for a lot of people to see, but I'm happy for DDP because I think I saw something with a potential betting odds is Adesanya opening up as a minus 330 favorite.
Wow.
I think that's a little high in my opinion.
I
Like
agree.
I think it should be the twos. I wouldn't even argue. I think the twos is fine. I think if it was
Yeah.
like a plus 180 minus one, so I think that might be a little close. But I think minus 330 is a little disrespectful, my opinion.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And man, I was one of the you said tell your people heartbroken. I was one of those people because I Robert Whitaker is one of my favorite fighters in UFC. Such a wholesome guy, he be streaming on Twitch, just games. Like he's just such a down to earth dude. and those the tattoos and banging on his chest. When I found out about that, that was something that to for his dad, that was something that just grew my fandom more. And to see him, perform, get knocked out by Duplessis, I mean, it says more to Duplessis, I feel. And the level that he's at, and really underestimated, because I really didn't get, I'll honestly give him a chance, because Whitaker just again looked untouchable in these last 9 years, against everyone that wasn't Israel Adesanya. None of the fights that he fought in, even the decisions, they weren't close. There was no.
Except Yoel Romero's, the second
Yes,
fight
yeah,
before Yoel
yes,
Romero won.
yes, yes, yes. I forgot about the Romero fight, but that was a long time ago. In recent memory, he hasn't fought in a
Yeah,
close fight that wasn't Izzy. The Vittori fight and a bunch of others weren't close. And he just looked so good. So for Duplessis to come in there and do what he did, um, it was hard to watch. It's hard to watch as a fan. I did have some it wasn't completely sober watching the fights. Had a little bit of ease, but I mean, and that just didn't help. Didn't help.
uh,
It was unfortunate. But for Duplessis, it's gonna be him and Izzy. And I agree with you. I mean, that minus 330, I would love to. I might throw something on Duplessis, because Duplessis is he could prove to be a tough matchup. I think Izzy would probably win that fight. I think he wins that fight probably 7 times out of 10, 8 times out of 10, if you want to put it
I
in,
don't know, man.
into
I
that
really
kind of
think people
perspective.
are
But he's really good and really well rounded.
Duplessis.
Yeah, yeah.
And yeah, he is. And people were like talking about his awkward fight stance. Like he does look awkward. He looks so stiff at
Yeah.
times.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. I haven't really seen much of Adesanya on the ground. I feel like all of his fights are usually stand up fights.
Yeah.
And I think I mean, this could be, this could be fabricated a little bit. But I remember Duplessis talking about when he trained with Adesanya years
Mm-hmm.
ago. They didn't have any kickboxing, Matt. They didn't spar kickboxing, but when it was wrestling and jujitsu,
Mm-hmm.
Duplessis apparently teared him up. I think he's kind of right, man. I think if he gets Adesanya to the ground, I think it could. I'm not gonna say it's gonna
Yeah.
be the beginning and end because that's a bit ignorant of me to say,
Mm-hmm.
but I think it could really start to go Duplessis' way. But it's so
Yeah.
hard because Adesanya is such a long fighter, and especially during his championship reign, against that, Yoel Romero and against Cannonier, those two fights specifically, they weren't really exciting fights. So how his game plan in a way was kind of like, separate the fighter from himself with his leg kicks. He's big on his kicks. But the thing about Duplessis, man, is he's not a hesitant fighter at all, and that's what makes him
No.
really exciting to watch. All of his fights, he's had 6 fights in the UFC, 5 finishes. The only finish I believe was against Brad Tavares. But every other fighter, man, against Brunson, obviously now Whitaker against Till, like yeah, like those names, like he's gotten the finish inside 2 rounds in all those 3 fighters I just named alone. I think he could. I think he could finish Adesanya, man. And obviously, that fight would probably have a immediate rematch. Although I don't know if Izzy would be deserving because he had an immediate rematch with Pereira, but he did finish that fight, so we'll see. But that fight has so much tension building up against the whole who's
Absolutely.
the African champ, and it makes it exciting.
Mm-hmm.
Although I do think Izzy kind of made a fool of himself in the ring and
He
the
did.
octagon afterwards. Like
He
I get
did.
it, talk to trash or whatever, but like
Yeah.
I don't know.
And
I mean, obviously the way Duplessis handled it, he was professional about it. I
yeah.
think the end of that interview, he walked away because he wasn't entertaining that any longer. But Adesanya was kind of like, it sounded stupid. He was like, I manifested this. I made this happen. You did not make this happen, my friend. You might have envisioned it, but you weren't the one fighting. I mean, he knocked out Whitaker in his first fight, but he didn't do it that night, Like, it's like, you gotta
Yeah.
stop taking credit away from Duplessis like you're some type of witch or wizard and made it happen. Like, that's,
Yeah. My issue
it's
with Izzy is the fact that he has to always make it about himself. And I respect Izzy as as an amazing fighter, and I've probably said in this podcast before, but he's so corny to me, and he's a frustrating fighter to really be a fan of, because I feel like he'll do good things, like that fight with Potan was incredible, and one of the best performances I've
course.
ever seen. And and that post-fight interview was very inspiring. But then,
It was.
he comes into the ring, and like, out of the octagon, whatever you want to call it. says the N word a million times and then just dips, and it was kind of just pointless. And I mean, I like building tension for a fight. I don't mind doing that, like WWE style, having a guy come out and talk trash, but that went on for way too long, and
Oh, it did.
it took away shine from Duplessis. I mean, at the end of the day, you are building hype for the next fight, because that will be a headliner later in the year. But I mean, it was kind of it went on for too long, and but I look forward to Duplessis versus Izzy. I think if Duplessis could get him to the ground, that he could pose a lot of threats there, and on the feet, I do think that Izzy would have a significant advantage. But don't sleep on the power Duplessis, because Whitaker's not a guy that's known as getting finished. I don't remember the last time he did get finished. In the
Adesanya, the first
UFC.
time they fought.
Yes, Adesanya the first time they fought, right. But
Ironically enough, that was the
that
second
that
round.
feels like a million years ago at this point. So what Whitaker wasn't somebody who he's always been known for having a good chin and not getting finished. And he got finished. So I'm looking forward to that fight. And then for Whitaker, there's been a lot of talk of
Strickland,
who
is
he
that
should
what you're gonna
fight
say?
there. Yeah, I like Strickland. I think that makes the most sense. Some maybe Cannonier as well, but
Well, they fought already.
yeah, but they fought already. Same thing with Vittori. So I mean, when you look at the top guys, Whitaker's either fought him, or I think Poton is the only other one that's in
Yeah.
the top, and
Well,
he's obviously
Potan's he's
moving
fighting
up.
Blachowicz.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so he's
exactly.
fighting up. So he's probably moving up. So Strickland's really the only fight for Whitaker right now. And it makes sense. If Strickland's able to pass that test, then people were calling for Strickland to be a potential title challenger. That would elevate him right there. Um
100%.
but I think Whitaker would have enough to beat him. I think Whitaker would finish Strickland,
We'll
personally.
see, man, because
But
everybody was saying,
yeah,
but there's a big difference between Strickland and Duplessis, though. Like Strickland,
absolutely.
he's Duplessis awkward, but you know, Strickland kind of. I'm not to say like he's in your face, but like I feel like Duplessis is a lot more aggressive, and Strickland has a really like he's very his what is he? He's a very like orthodox fighter. Like I
Mhm.
noticed Duplessis in his fights, he was switching his stances up constantly. You
Yeah.
know, like I think there's a big difference between the two. But again, you never know. But I think Strickland, if he passes that test, he definitely deserves a shot at the title.
Yeah.
But
And so I think that's the only matchup for Whitaker at this point. And it's gonna be tough for him to kind of get back to the title. It's gonna take him, quite a bit at this point after that big loss. I can't really imagine I can't, craft a scenario right now, because you'd have to see what the outcome of is of DDP versus Izzy. But it was a tough loss for Whitaker. Might have been that loss might have I mean, he's only in his mid-30s, so he's not like completely,
he's like 32. He's
done.
young.
Yeah, he's mid to early 30s. So he's somebody who's still young, so he has some time, but that has definitely put him back significantly in terms of the title picture. But it's now time to go to co-main and main event. We got to start with the co-main, and Brandon Moreno versus Pantoja. Pantoja getting the decision victory. If I'm not mistaken, it was split decision, right? But
Yes.
not deservingly so. As most people pointed out,
I think that
especially on
49
verdict.
46 was uncalled for. I do
Yeah,
believe Moreno. It was so freaking close, man.
yeah,
Like, honestly, like I wasn't mad. I mean, I like Moreno.
I
But the
love
thing
Moreno.
is, right, is Pantoja, he took him down 6 times. He had a good bit of control time. But that fifth round, the judges, their scoring was inconsistent, right? Because I think two of the three judges, I don't know if it was Sal D'Amato or Derek Leary, or one of those two is, I know they judged that fight.
Mhm.
I don't know which one it
It
was,
was the
but
Derek Clearly.
it wasn't Derek Leary.
Yes.
Okay, so I knew I wasn't too off on that. He
Yeah.
him and some other Junichiro Kamijo, that's the other guy.
Mm-hmm.
They he they both gave round 4 to Moreno
Yep.
and round 5 to Pantoja. And that both of those rounds were very similar. Moreno was piecing Pantoja up on the feet for like the first minute and a half, 2 minutes of that fight. And
Yep.
all Pantoja did was he took him down, whatever, and then he just hugged him. He didn't pose any threat afterwards. And it's like that's kind of similar to like the Islam situation. Like, yeah, I guess you're controlling it, but you're not doing anything with that.
Yeah.
I think he had a couple submission attempts, but that wasn't in that round. You know, I don't know, man. I really saw it 48-47 Moreno. but I can't really argue
Yeah.
that decision.
So you were okay with the split decision? I mean, you thought Moreno won that fight?
I do. I think the 49-46
Wow.
was a bit much, but I
Wow.
definitely no. Like I said, I think 48-47 either way. That fight is in contention for fight of the year. So either way,
Absolutely.
man, you I can't argue it. But I think
Absolutely.
you take away that knockdown that because he had that early knockdown in round one. No one's arguing that Pantoja didn't win round one.
Yeah.
Anybody watched the fight knew Pantoja won round one. But you
Hmm.
take that away, man. I think throughout the course of that fight, from rounds 2 through 5, I think Moreno was just he showed he was the better striker in my opinion. But you can't take away from the grit Pantoja had, you know. And it's
Absolutely.
hard because if they fight again, which Uncle Dana wasn't ruling out a technically fourth fight, but third
Hmm.
professional fight between the two.
Yeah.
It's kind of hard, like that on that mental of like that fight. Like in a way, the fighter has a number,
Yeah.
like his numbers in your head. That's the saying. But you saw
Yeah.
with Izzy and Pereira, he was down 3-0 and he settled the score, whatever that
Yeah.
means.
Yeah. Whatever that
You
means,
know,
correct. But I mean, we saw Izzy able to get over that hump, and Moreno's a guy he's went through so much adversity in his career. This would be, just another stepping stone for him. And personally, I saw 48-47 the other way. I thought Pantoja won that fight. After the fight ended, I was convinced that he had won. Um, for sure. I really want to rewatch it because again, it was a really exciting fight. Because I had,
yeah,
obviously round one Pantoja, round two Moreno. I think those two were pretty much undeniable. So it was 1-1 going into the third. I leaned Pantoja in the third. And then the fourth and fifth were close, but I leaned Pantoja in the fifth and Moreno in the fourth. Personally, on my first, again, I only watched it once, and as I admitted, I was a little bit of those. But personally, I like for the 48-47, and I agree with the control time thing as well. I think that there has to be more consistency in terms of the judging and how they score control, because if control when you're not doing anything or posing any threats isn't doing much, but at the same time it is control, so it's a slippery slope. But I think Pantoja more than deserving, and an incredible story too. He was admitted that he was still doing Uber Eats and doing delivery just a few years ago while he was still fighting professionally just to provide for his family. So he's a guy that's had an incredible story. That post-fight interview was gut-wrenching. I didn't even hear it live. But I heard it, in a couple a day or two later, and I was just, really, really blown away. He gained a fan on Saturday night for sure, because I mean, for him to when he was like, are you proud of me now, Dad? I was like, wow. Like that's some crazy, crazy stuff. But good for him, man. Good for him. I mean, someone who really came from nothing. You love to hear those stories. And Alexandra Pantoja, I would love the rematch. That would be my ideal scenario. But if they don't go the rematch and they don't think Marino's deserving of a rematch for the title, I would say that's fine too. I wouldn't be too mad at it. But if
no,
I
I
had
would
to,
not.
yeah, if they do match up with someone else, I think the matchups and most people have kind of come to a consensus that this would be the next step in flyweight if they don't rematch. I'm like Pantoja versus Royval too. Royval's been on a little bit of a win streak now. I think he's 4, but I think he's probably the most deserving out of those top 3 guys at this point outside of Marino rematch. And then for Marino, fight a guy in Amir Albazi who's hot right now, and is an up and comer. So those would be my 2 picks if they don't rematch. Personally, I would like to see the rematch. I'd like to see him go for a third time, but
Yeah,
we've
no,
seen
I
so
would too.
many of those already, especially involving Moreno already. So I don't know if the UFC wants to do that again.
Yeah, he's had he had the 4 fights with Figgy, but
Mm-hmm.
take it away. But in between the third and fourth fight, he had an interim championship fight with Cara France.
Yep.
So and then he fought. So he's fought what 4-1-1. So he's had 6 championship fights in a row. So and it would be sick though because I think he'd be the first fighter ever to win the belt 3 separate times if hypothetically he fought Pantoja
Yeah.
again. Like you don't hear that often. You
No,
know.
no, if ever.
I don't know, man. We'll see. I wouldn't really rule out. I wouldn't be disappointed if that fight did or didn't happen. But I think if we fought Albazi, man, especially to see the way a lot of people thought that shouldn't have been a split decision. It should have been unanimous for Carl France. Most people said 4 rounds to 1 for Carl France. So I think Moreno works him, in my opinion, all Bazzi.
I
But
agree.
we'll see. We'll see, man. And
We
if he
will
wins
see.
that, maybe you'll get a shot at the title again.
Yeah.
Because Moreno,
Again.
it's so hard because everybody knows Moreno is like he's so good, right?
Yeah.
Like ah, it kills me. I really wanted him to win,
Me too.
but I'm
Me
not
too. And
arguing that.
and and it did hurt me because I although I did have the scorecard for Pantoja, I was pulling for Moreno. It was a tough night for back to back for me or back to three straight because I wanted Turner to win. I'm a big fan of Jalen Turner. He didn't bet the victory. Looking forward to Whitaker getting back and getting potentially winning. Didn't win. And then I'm a big Brandon Moreno guy, and Moreno also lost as well. So it was a tough night for me as a fight fan personally. And I saw a funny clip that it was like you don't know what pain feels like unless you're like an MMA fan or something like that, or seeing it. And then there was like this guy who was like, nothing will treat you how to deal with pain than watching MMA fights, because you stay up late to watch your favorite fighters just to see him get absolutely brutally knocked out. And then you just gotta sit with it, and there's nothing you could do.
Sucks, man.
And I'm like, honestly, true, because if your favorite team loses, it's just a loss. But like, you're rooting for a guy and he gets like brutally hurt. It's another level of pain. So
It
it's it's
is.
it's tough. It's tough being an MMA fan, but for the flyweight division, man, I feel like those top three and Pantoja, Moreno, and Figgy, that they're so like the skill gap,
It's like rock paper scissors.
is so minimal. Yeah, exactly. So it's honestly like a flip of a coin every time these guys fight. And I could very well see this championship out being passed around the flyweight division. At least of the flyweight top five, if not top three.
Yeah,
Um
and Faggy's out of 25 too. There's speculation of him fighting Cruz in September.
yes, I saw that. And is he done at 35 then? Or
Oh, you mean
25, I
25?
mean?
Yeah,
Yeah, is
yeah.
he done at
I think he,
25? Okay.
dude, he
Well
is
then that
so he's chiseled to the bone at 25.
he
He's
is.
35,
He is.
36 years old. It's hard to make that cut.
Right. And
But
I would like to see him fight up. I forgot that was the rumors after his last fight. So, but again, that top three, that top two, three still very stacked with or without Figgy, but they're so close, and the flyweight division so competitive, each guy every time they step into the octagon, it's you really don't know who's gonna win because they're so close. They're so close. And it's just a puncher's chance. And a flip of a coin fight by fight. But for someone who cannot say that same thing for the featherweight division, as the king, Alexander Volkanovski, showed why he is, the man to beat, at 145, and he had,
so
like I said,
dominant.
dominant
It's insane.
performance, dominant. It's the only word. It's
I
the
wasn't
only right
expecting
adjective.
that.
No, I was not. I was not.
Dude, he had
Um,
7 takedowns on Yair Rodriguez. 7. And
yeah,
the fight was stopped in the middle. No, sorry, the end of the third round.
yeah,
So like that. Oh gosh. And I think Ilya Taporia commented. He's like, he doesn't really like Yair's fighting style. And I love Yair. He's such a crafty fighter. He's really one of a kind. But
yeah.
you know, I don't really think he. I mean, he obviously had that submission against Emmett, but he was on his back for that. I don't really think he has great takedown defense. He's not to say he's one rounded because that's just bullcrap because he's so athletic. You don't
Yeah.
really get fighters like that often.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe I'm just maybe I'm wrong in that because of how well rounded Volkan. Like I don't really. People are starting to say he's in the GOAT combo. I don't really. I think that's a little extreme because John Jones exists.
Yeah.
But I think here's the thing, right? Like if let's say he beats Taporia, right, and he's willing to fight Aljo if he wants to go when he goes 45. So let's say
Yeah.
he beats those two, and somehow, not saying somehow, it's like I wouldn't rule this out. If he beats Islam as well, he gets the double champ status. He beats those two. I would not argue him being top 3 of all time.
Yeah.
I would even,
I
because
would say top
you know
two, honestly. I
you
mean,
think you put
with
him past GFP.
with that resume, that's a better. Personally, I feel like that's a better resume than GSP's. If hypothetically, in that hypothetical world where he beats those three guys, you beat a guy in you beat then another top challenger to Topuria. I don't even think it needs to be Topuria to be in that conversation. I think if he beats Aljo, who was a pretty dominant champ at this point at 135, if he gets past Sugar Sean, if he gets past Sugar Sean, and then vacates the belt and goes up to 45, that's a dominant champion that he would end up beating. And then he would end up going up in weight and beating another dominant champion. I I I listen, I love GSP. GSP is one of my favorites of all time. But when you look at the resume, how does it doesn't really get better unless you're John Jones.
Well, do you forget? Don't forget though. GSP did win two belts. He beat Michael
He
Bisping
did.
after a few years of retirement.
He
So
did. He did.
he
But I
has that
mean,
over Volk.
yeah, but if Volk was able to beat Islam, he would have that two belts. And I think personally, and you mentioned that as well, and I think that's a good point for debate because at the same time, you talk about that fight with Michael Bisping, but when you look at it, in retrospect, Michael Bisping wasn't the most elite champion in the middleweight division. And at that point in his career, he was old. And GSP was also old. So it was, it was kind of a special circumstance. Whereas Islam right now, we can all agree is in his prime. So Volk would
31
be
years old.
beating
He's
him
not
in
really
his
old.
prime.
Yeah.
And the same thing with Aljo. So, for him to beat these guys in his prime while they're in their prime, I think that would give him the slight edge over Volk and I'm not over Volk, over GSP in this hypothetical world that we are crafting right now. But
Yeah,
again,
I think
as of right
Aljo
now,
would be
no shot.
no. I think Volk would be a huge favorite against Aljamain. Like I'm not even bull crapping you. I wouldn't be surprised if I saw the -3s, -4s.
Yeah.
Like I think it would be a drastic difference in odds.
Yeah.
And Tapori, I think
Yeah.
that would be closer to those odds. But
Really, you think
yeah,
Taporia has a
Tapori's talking.
better odds?
I think so because
Wow.
you forget Tapori. Oh, not obviously not forgetting, but like Tapori is a
Right.
natural 45er. He's undefeated.
Mm-hmm.
He's never really been challenged. This takeaway besides that fight was Jai Herbert when he was knocked down. But
Mm-hmm.
when people bring that up, they're like, dude, you almost got knocked out by a guy who wasn't even ranked. That it's like, how do you expect to beat the champ? But then you saw that fight against Emmett completely one sided. But
Yeah.
Emmett's old, so it's like it's kind of hard to use him. And I get what you're saying, like one more fight than to fight for the title because you beat Josh Emmett, that shouldn't warrant you a title shot. But you look at the contenders, right? It's hard to give it to Arnold Allen because he just lost to Holloway.
Yeah.
Fighters don't really get a championship fight off after a loss. And I don't think it would be good. It doesn't make sense for him to fight Holloway right now because I think we've talked about this before. Holloway has all the champions that I'm sorry, all the contenders that Volkanovski has beaten. Holloway
Mm-hmm.
beat them first. Aldo, we beat him first. Ortega, Max beat
Yeah.
first, and Yair. So it just wouldn't. I think it would kind of, not diminish Volk's title run because he's still beating top-notch guys, but
Yeah.
it would kind of discredit him in a way because even though he beat Holloway 3 times, it's like got a sloppy seconds in a way. So
Fair enough.
I think he should fight Taporia next, and Allen, out after that. But Allen should fight a guy like Yair, in my opinion. I think that would be a really good fight.
I like that. I like that matchup at 45 for sure. I think if Volk is forced to fight at 45, I think Taporia makes the most sense. I think book it. Personally, I'd like to see Taporia fight one more time, but as you said, it's tough to say who he would fight because obviously Holloway is booked now with the Korean Zombie. So that's the number one contender right now currently in is Holloway. And he's booked already in a fight that he's probably gonna win, which so it really doesn't make much
With
sense.
Holloway,
Yeah, for Holloway, and
you
then
know what? You know how much he's favored right now?
it's like
Take a wild
minus
guess.
800.
It's very close. 810. That's like,
810.
and then the zombie
I'm
is at
good. I'm
plus
sharp.
540.
I'm so
Nah,
sharp.
that was sharp. I mean, anything
Uh
under like 500 would have just been a stupid guess because like who
yeah,
would expect?
exactly. But but I do agree. I mean, if I say if Taporia has to wait on the sidelines, then give him a fight. Um but if Volk has to fight next and it has to defend his title again, before fighting Islam, then I would say Taporia. And then for Yair, I'd want to see him run it back with Ortega. Ortega's healthy now. I checked before, the show just to make sure that he's recovering well. But apparently he's able to be training fully since like March or April was the last time he was reported on being fully healthy. So I want to see that fight actually happen because after I mean granted he did win the fight due to the injury but you didn't really get to see the full thing. I wanted to see it, and I think
Yeah,
that would be
yeah.
a great fight
I
when
think
you
that fight
run
might
it
be
back.
too soon to book, though. I don't know if Ortega should be fighting up in the. Yeah, it happened through injury, but I don't know if he should be fighting up. He's been out for a while, so. But I guess I would rule it out. But I feel like that's a matchup that's so exciting that I wouldn't want to see happen right away.
Fair
You know,
enough. Fair enough. We get
but
want each of those guys a win under their belt before running that back. I'm with that as
because I
well.
really believe Yair can be a future champ. I think him and Taporia, those guys will fight more than once when they do fight. Like that's a fight I know is going to happen.
Oh
So
yeah. Oh yeah. And I would love to see the exchanges on the feet because both guys are just so crisp.
they
With
are.
the with their boxing and kickboxing. So it would just be it would really be an exciting bout. But UFC 290, man. What a card. I could
Awfully
talk
dangerous.
about it for hours. And just so many crazy moments, highlight finishes. And it was capped off by another dominant performance by who someone who is in the conversation for the GOAT at that GOAT in general,
In
which,
general.
as we said, we don't really agree with as of yet. Not really in my top three just yet. But I think by the end of his career, he'll probably get there. And then, in the featherweights, I think that's the conversation that we're gonna have very shortly. But first, let's go into some of the major headlines surrounding MMA right now. Walt Harris, most recent news. Walt Harris was supposed to fight Parazian. But that was off due to Walt Harris testing positive in a drug test. So that fight is off this weekend as Walt Harris has returned after 2 years. So Walt Harris is a very stand-up guy, so wouldn't imagine it would be something that he knew about. But I think, at the end of the day, it's unfortunate that these things happen, but you shot have caught something and that's going to be it. So his return is delayed indefinitely until we get more information about that. And then the biggest news out of the MMA world, but not out of the fighting world, I would say, because John Jones and Stipe Miocic was booked for October UFC 295 in MSG. Me and Aiden mentioned earlier, we want to go see it. And I would love to. I would love to be there for that card. I mean, for that fight. But that's a fight. I mean, our initial leans obviously we'll talk about when it gets there. I don't want to guess it too early, but I like John Jones in that fight. I don't think um there's an aspect of Stipe's game at this point in his career that I think is better than John Jones. I know DC Daniel Cormier was saying that Stipe's boxing could pose some threats, but we've seen how John
That's the
Jones
salty
looked.
DC, my friend.
Yeah,
DC,
that's
that's the salty DC.
See, I don't
Dude,
want to say it,
Stipe is
but
41 years old. He hasn't fought in 2 years. And when he fought Ngannou last time, he was dominated, and he was laid out cold. Like, when you don't fight for 2 years, when you're like, maybe 29 to 31, 31, okay, fine. But dude, like you're getting older, man. Like your
yeah.
testosterone levels are dropping drastically. It's like
Hmm.
he's gonna be 41, I think, when he fights him. And Jones, how dangerous he looked against Cyril Gahn. It's
Yeah,
like, you know, I don't think that fight is gonna be close. I think that fight will be finished inside the championship rounds. But who
absolutely.
knows? That's just me talking. I could be wrong. I don't think there's any scenario Stipe wins that fight. And I think either way, Jones wins that belt, Stipe wins that belt. It's a double retirement fight, and that's what makes that fight. That's what makes that fight so special. Because Jones has nothing to prove. Everybody's like, "Oh, he's ducking Sergey. He's ducking Sergey." Dude, Jones has had 13 or 14 championship title fights or
Yeah.
championship wins. He has nothing to prove to
Yeah.
anybody.
Do you really think John Jones is ducking anybody? We're talking about John Jones.
I
Like,
know.
has anyone seen John Jones fight? Even this most recent fight, like he made Cyril Gahn, a guy who people would thought was. I mean, I still think he's probably most likely a future champion. For sure. I think he's one of the best kickboxers in the heavyweight division, if not the best. But did you see how he just dismantled him? It's John Jones. Like he's not ducking anybody. Like I don't care if you're giving him a prime elite heavyweight. Like freaking I don't know Brock Lesnar. I'm trying to think of elite heavyweights back in the
I
day,
know.
but give him feed him the best heavyweight that you think of all time, which most people think is Stipe. And I don't think he's gonna have a problem. So I would love to see that as a double retirement fight. As much as it pains me to see two two of my favorite fighters to watch go. But an exciting bout nonetheless. In the heavyweight
Unless
division.
Jones tries to, go for title defense record, Stipe's title defense record in the heavyweight division, because Stipe had 3 or 4 title defenses. I think 3. No, it
Three.
might have.
That'd be a
It's
lot
either
of.
3 or 4.
That'd
I
be a
know that
lot
for a
more
fact.
fights for Bones, though. That'd be a lot more
Well,
fights because
yeah, because this is technically his first
because
defense.
this is
So
first defense. I need two more fights. I mean, who is he fighting again? Like he'd have to
I
fight
guess
Sergey
Sergey's obviously
and then
deserving the next shot after that.
somebody else. So I mean I'm really not sure, but
But yeah,
I
so
think you're right in that assumption. And I'm looking forward to being in MSG with you in October. Let's as the
oh
girls
man,
like
I
to say,
can't,
let's
dude.
manifest it now. Or
We're gonna
Izzy.
manifest it. But as soon as we look at those title fights, that manifestation is gonna go down the drain. I'm sorry, not
Yeah,
the title fights,
the tickets.
the fight tokens.
I know what you
I
meant.
don't
I
give
know
up.
what you meant. Yeah, that not gonna be favorable for two college students working part-time. But it's all right. We'll find a way there nonetheless. And then other news, Team Connor goes 0 for 7 and Tough. Don't really care. I don't think anyone's really interested in Tough anymore, especially
Real
after
quick, he did
Connor.
ask Dana though. He's like,
Yeah.
"What happens if my team gets swept?" Yo,
Yeah.
he's already given up. Did you see that?
Yeah, no, I did see that clip and it was just like, okay. All right.
At this season, like I don't think I've watched one episode once. I'm gonna
Yeah,
be honest with you, man.
I watched the first few strictly for the podcast to talk about it, and I watched like the first two, and I was like, I really don't want to talk about this anymore because I don't really think anyone's interested. So why
Yeah.
am I gonna bother? Spending 30 minutes out of my day watching that because again, it's all build up, and then you see a fight, and you know who's gonna win so far. If it's gonna be Michael Chandler's guy, and but it's a stupid concept anyway. Prospects versus veterans, it doesn't make sense. But I don't even want to talk about Tough too much longer. But a retirement in MMA, one that kind of surprised me. Kevin Lee, after losing last weekend, or I guess 2 weekends ago now, decided to hang it up the gloves at 30 years old. I don't hate the decision. Obviously, you can't judge a guy, but we haven't the best of Kevin Lee was definitely in the past. He's 30, but he didn't look like himself for quite some time now. So, I'm happy for him, wishing him all the best in whatever he chooses to do. But Kevin Lee, a guy who challenged for an interim champion in what feels like a million years ago, but was really only a few years ago, has decided to end his MMA career and rightfully so. If it's time for him, it's time. But I thought he was returning to MMA and was going to be here to stay. So that was a little unfortunate, but
Yeah,
nonetheless, it was time. It was time. Yeah.
it
But
was.
now time for the biggest what I was alluding to earlier, the biggest news in fighting. I feel in my personal opinion, Tyson Fury versus Francis Ngannou booked for a boxing match. I think it was 10 rounds now. I think the reports have come out. It's 10 rounds, boxing rules, like just a straight boxing match. No other, kind of stipulations or anything like that. That's what some people were worried about, but straight boxing match. And in October in Saudi Arabia, and I'm freaking excited for that, man. I mean, it feels, a lot of people aren't gonna give Ngannou a chance, but no one has the power that Francis Ngannou has. So if he's able to just touch Tyson Fury, Fury could go to sleep. We saw the craziness that happened in the Deontay Wilder fights, especially that first one where he was unconscious and then just rose from the dead, on some Undertaker type of stuff. Um,
Yeah,
but I'm really looking forward to that match in boxing. I'm not really a big boxing guy personally.
no,
But that
neither am I.
fight outside of Spence Crawford are two fights that are really can't miss in boxing right now, and it's gonna be a good one. And it's always nice seeing two heavyweights in there. Tyson Fury's a guy who's a big personality, and Francis Ngannou, I gotta give him respect. He took a gamble on himself by not resigning with the UFC, and it freaking paid off because, as his manager alluded to on the MMA Hour today that I read, when I was scrolling through Twitter, this paycheck is exactly what they wanted. So he's getting paid as he deserves. So I'm happy for Francis. He beat the allegations. All the people saying that it was the wrong decision. It was the right decision. Once this fight is booked and he gets paid, it was the right decision for him to leave because there's no payday that's going to be bigger than the one that he gets in this boxing match. Because boxing matches, they don't pay well when you're at the bottom. You're not getting much. You're getting peanuts. But when you're at the cream of the crop, you're getting more than I'd say a vast majority of fighters that are not named Conor McGregor, which is all of them. So I mean, exciting
Yeah,
boxing matchup. I know it's an MMA
and you,
podcast, but have to mention it.
yeah, and you don't know how many more of these big fights Ngannou's gonna have. He's 36 years old.
Exactly.
That's getting up there in age for fighting. So, you know, this was big for his career. As you know, as much as it hurts to see, you know, Jones and Ngannou will probably never happen. You can't ignore the excitement that Fury and Ngannou brings to the table. I do believe though that it's an exhibition fight. I'm not expecting Ngannou to. I wasn't
No,
expecting
I
Fury to
don't
put
think
up his.
so.
Yeah,
I don't think so.
it's a
No.
professional fight.
Yeah, 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 yeah. No, no. They can
No,
knock each other
are you
out. They can
sure?
knock each other out. I'm almost positive because I think that was a lot of the initial criticism was, oh, it's gonna be exhibition, but
I
with
gotta look.
the interview today, I'm almost positive. And again, I'm like 99% sure. So there's that 1%. But I'm 90% sure it's a professional fight. Not for a title or anything, I don't think. Nothing's on the line, but it's gonna be 10 rounds and they're able to knock. I think that there was a quote from the managers, like they're able to knock the F out of each other out.
Awesome.
Um, that's exciting. You know, if it was an exhibition match, I would be saying a completely different story. I'd still be happy for Francis, but I'd be pissed off that, it's kind of teasing us. But the fact that
Yeah,
it's a professional fight, I'm with it. No stipulations, no BS, just straight fighting. And I'm excited.
exciting.
But now pivoting on here. Unfortunately, due to time constraints, we're not gonna be able to do the far from the anime segment here today. Gonna forego it. And we're not gonna talk much about this next fight card either. Holly Holm versus Bueno Silva. I heard Silva saying that she's gonna dominate for 4 rounds and then knock her out in the fifth. I don't see that happening. For my best bet, I went 1-1 last week for clarification. I thought Whitaker was gonna get the knockout. Didn't happen. But I knew Pantoja was gonna go the distance. So that was I guess that would be my bounce back performance after 5 weeks of drought. But for week 8, main event ends in unanimous decision. I think either way, I think it's going to go to a decision. I can't see either of them finishing. Holly Holm in a main event, it's like a decision. She should be called the decisionator when she's in a main event because that's all she does. So minus 172, not great odds, but I think better. I think you still get value there because I think it's almost a lock, or as close to a lock as it gets. But for the MMA on the Island podcast, that's gonna do it. Sorry to wrap up quickly. We got the Zoom thing to worry about. But Aiden, I'm so happy to have you back, brother.
Brother, I am excited too.
It was a lot of fun as always.